Thank you everyone for coming out this evening to this evening's author event at the East Hampton Library. Today we have Angela Taylor George discussing her new released book, Haute Pursuit. A little bit about Angela. Angela Taylor George is the founder of the trend-setting multi-brand showroom Times Two and renowned New York label Alice and Trixie. Uh, Entrepreneur, fashion designer, creative director, and author. Hailed as early on as the voice of authority by New York Daily News, Angela's made an indelible mark on fashion internationally over 4 decades, playing a vital role in the co-creation and launch of major fashion trends widely copied today and originating designs still cherished and traded around the world. And Angela Taylor George will be in conversation with Durell Godfrey. And a little bit about Durell. Uh, Durell spent 30 years at Glamour magazine and 20 years at the East Hampton Star, a fashion illustrator and extensive photographer background, and published a coloring book for grown-ups called Me Cluttered, which was published by Doubleday, and a second one was published by Harper&Collins, Color Your Happy Home. And without further ado, I'll turn over the discussion tonight to Durell Godfrey and Angela Taylor George.
Hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. How did you arrive? I read your book, so I know that you did recreational shopping with your mother as a child. Did that steer you fashionista eventually, or
I mean, yeah, what Durell's referring to is, in the first, it's actually in the first chapter of the book where I really talk extensively about what shopping meant back in those days. So, where it was like it was a ritual, go with family, with friends, and you made a day of it. You went shopping, you ate something, where like it's almost like a lost art today with everything online and less stores and things like that. So, yeah, it definitely and also where I grew up in Long Island in Cedarhurst, which is up island, and where I grew up, fashion was a thing. Like, you wore certain things when you went to school. There were certain trends that were like you would be, you were in or you were out, so you would be wearing certain trends and things like that. So yeah, definitely shopping, and there was a village that we would say we're going to town, and that was the town we went to, and chock filled with stores. So yeah, it was ingrained in me, and fashion was ingrained in me. I also had an older sister, and of course my mom, who was fashionable. My older sister, she was 10 years older, Maria. She was extremely fashionable, so I had her, basically as a muse. And and just yeah, so it definitely, I think, set part of the trajectory for me to go into the industry.
thank you for doing that because I wouldn't have this if she hadn't done that. Don't you think that shopping is sort of a bonding experience too? Or where you're pretending, oh, this would look good on you, or that would. It's playing dress up. It's really playing dress up, and you're trying on stuff that you probably wouldn't own necessarily, but you get to see what it. I think you said in your book that the first thing you bought on your own was
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's dating us a little bit, but
Yeah, it was
tell us
19
about that.
it was 1970, and I remember going to the store in my town. It was called Sistine, and it was a big store. And I can remember like it was yesterday. There was an upstairs and a downstairs, and I went downstairs, and they had these racks of these short shorts. We called them hot pants. And I remember the ones I wanted, and I remember going home. At the time, my dad was ill. My dad ended up dying of cancer, but he was ill, and he would have never been home. He would have been at work that day. But I remember going home and saying, Dad, I saw, I want to get these $5. I remember this, they were $5, and that they were red, white, and blue hot pants. And anyway, so that's, yes, that was my first like big, purchase, my aha moment. But I will say it is a bonding experience, definitely going shopping with friends. And it yeah, it was fun to do that. And yeah, and then trying on, and this looks good, that, but then there's always, it's I always think about, like, there's always like the salesperson who's trying to push stuff, and the friend's like, your ass looks too big in that, like, forget it, and the salesperson's upset. But anyway, they made me think of that. But yeah, it totally, I miss that. I really miss that.
And it doesn't exist to these days, because everybody's buying stuff. So you don't have that moment where you're, oh, wait a minute, this is not going to look good on me. I mean, just all, I mean, the dressing rooms, where there would be 3 people in the same dressing room piled in, throwing clothes around and stuff like that. This is not a thing that the LBIS to the thrift shop, I guess. TJ Maxx, I guess. What did you wear with those pants, those high pants? How did you accessorize the rest of that?
Now you really bring me back. Probably had a crop top. I mean, I was 10, so I probably wore them with a crop top and my like Keds or something back then. Yeah.
And everybody was happy with you wearing short hot pants.
Yeah, it was a trend. Yeah.
So you decided early on that you wanted to be in business, fashion business, or I mean, was it business and I want to pick a subject to be out, or was it I want to do fashion and I'll be a boss?
That's a great question. I think, I mean, my dad wasn't, my dad started a business. My dad came over from Greece, and he basically built a business, a grocery business, and then he moved and built a building for the bigger business, and built the home that we lived in Cedarhurst and things like that. So I saw, that hard work and that ethic growing up. My mom was she was a housewife, as we called it back then. And my dad, so I saw that, like, that hard work and the payoff of hard work. So I don't know. I always knew I wanted to do something. And I think more important than anything, I always knew that I wanted to have my own money. For whatever reason, I didn't want to be reliant on anybody. I don't know. Maybe because my mom was reliant on I don't know, but not that I noticed any rift about that. But I just feel that, I don't know, for whatever reason, I always felt like I wanted to have my own money. And then fashion was the thing, I dabbled in different things, but fashion was the one thing that kind of stayed with me. And then I saw where, yeah. And then I had this drive of, like, I want to have a store, because I worked in retail for many years and I was a buyer. And then I decided that I wanted to, have my own store, but then that was going to be too expensive because, I write about it in the book, but I ended up starting a showroom instead. But I guess, yeah, I always wanted to make my own money and to have my own company, have my own business. I out from a very young age, that was evident for me.
Drawing pictures of fashion outfits and things like that all along, or because you wore 2 hats. I mean, you were the boss, the CEO, the CFO, whatever all those letters are. You were the one. The buck stops at you, but at the same time, you're also, designing the stuff over there and picking what's going to be in the line and what's not, and editing and all that stuff. So that's juggling 2.
Exactly. No, and it's funny, I was talking about this recently with somebody that I think I'm split 50-50 right, left brain, because I definitely I love entrepreneurship. I love business, and I love business. And I knew that early on as well. I remember my mom, after my dad passed, we had the store that my dad had, and my mom wanted to divide it and rent half of it to somebody to make an income producing property. And I remember when I was like 17, I remember telling her, you have to have escalation in the lease, like that. And I was like, I don't know where I knew nothing
A
about
17-year-old word.
Exactly. I knew nothing about anything, but I just knew there needed to be increases like every year or something. And so for some reason, I did have that business side, and then I do have the creative side. So I think I'm like kind of bipolar. I really think I'm split down the middle. So because I am, on the one hand, I can be creating and I could be art directing and creative directing, and then on the other hand, I would be always telling my designers, like, design needs to meet commerce. It's like that. I would say actually creativity needs to meet commerce. Like, you can't just be creative and not think about the commerce of it, because some creatives are just, just creative, and they need someone to rein in the creativity and to be able to merchandise it and market it. Many creatives are strictly, what is it, right brain creatives, so it's strictly right brain. Yeah. And so I think, so yes, for me, I definitely feel like I have the both.
Got it from your dad because you saw him growing a business. He wasn't just
Through it. Yeah. Because
understood that I think that made you brave.
I mean, I guess seeing my dad, subconsciously seeing my dad take risks, and, he had another store, and then they ended up, leaving, and originally they had a store, and I think this was before I was born. I think they lived like above the store somehow, or near the store. This was in Queens. And then my dad, he grew the business, and then, built this big building. So that that was scaling basically. So I saw him scaling his business. So maybe that, yeah, I definitely saw that.
Factory is exactly the same as yours because you did.
Yes.
Then one day you had, I guess, a eureka moment. I don't want to work for somebody else. I want to work. And
yeah. Well, that actually came, it kind of came a little bit unexpectedly, because I remember I did have a boss before my last boss when I was working for people, that he told me, he said, you need to work for yourself. I think because I was always opinionated. I was very, I always had my own way of how I thought things should be. And he said, you really need to have your own company. And then I went on to, I think then the last job, well, it was the last job that I had. I remember there was, I didn't expect to start the company when I did. Basically, no, I didn't, but what happened was I had asked for a raise. I write about it in the book. I had asked for a raise, and there were two brothers, and there were stores in the city, and I was the buyer at the time. And I asked for a raise, and then one brother seemed, amenable, and the other one he actually was incensed that I thought that I wasn't making enough money, that like, how dare I ask for a raise? So it was
not a thing they would do to a man, by the way.
No,
Yes.
it's not. No, and I'll tell you a story about that too, actually, and I will tell you something. But anyways, long story short, I was done. I quit on the spot. I'm like, this is like, I'm done. And that's
Brave girl.
Yeah, I was just like, I mean, I had just gotten married too, so I had the support of my husband at the time. So it wasn't, not that he didn't physically really support me, but the emotional support. So I felt, but I did work for somebody early on that I was the manager of the store and he was the assistant manager. And somehow I got wind that he was making more money than I was. And I remember my bosses, and this was back in the early 80s, and my bosses in no uncertain terms said, well, he has a family. Like, yeah, that was that. It was that.
Hasn't heard that.
This was in the early 80s, and it's like, well, he has a family and you don't. It was like, it's, like, shut up and keep the train moving.
I'm sorry. Oh, I just scared myself. Sorry. So you quit on the spot, which is, again, a very brave thing to do. I think I've never done that myself. Fired, yes, but putting on the spot, no. So how long did it take after walking out and saying goodbye? Did you put the money down on the space, or?
Yeah, it was fast. It was right early September, and that was right around the time, September, all the shows, and and the trade shows were happening, and at that time it was the Pret-a-Porter show, and these were the shows back in the day. Anyway, so it was right around that time, and I knew if I wanted to have a showroom, which was, I kind of, basically what happened was I was in retail, but I was buying. So I was buying from these showrooms that were selling wholesale. So these B2B showrooms were selling to me. So I saw that this business model of like having a showroom, and that was a lot less, expensive. It was a lot, less money that I would have to invest to have a showroom versus a retail store. So I saw that as an opportunity to get my foot in the door and to like, hey, I can do that. I can do what all these people are doing. Like, I'm going to showrooms and they're selling me stuff. And I'm like, I could do that. So I kind of had my sights on that I could do this. And then the trade shows were happening. So I was able to go and kind of see who had representation in New York and who didn't, because then they would need a showroom. And then I was able to be like, well, I'm starting this new showroom. And I was honestly, it's like when I look back, I'm like, I wish I had like, I think about myself now and how I feel like the things that I did back then, like I have to incorporate now. Like I just was fearless, I'm just like, I'm going around, I'm opening the showroom. I have no experience doing this other than the fact that I've been a buyer and I know good product and and at the time it was all telephone. There was no email, there was no internet. We were calling the buyers, cold calling them, that kind of thing. And I don't know, somehow I just was like, I could do this. So I really just did it with a cash advance, a $1,500 cash advance that I start though, and then what happened was I took part in someone's showroom. There was someone I knew that had a space that he wasn't utilizing properly. So, he never had his collection. He was from Greece. It's a long story. It's in the book. But anyway, I went to him and it was $900 a month. And then at that time, the brands would give you advances on the commission. So you would get like a showroom fee and a cash advance, like a advance on commission. So that was like, that started to be, the money, like that's kind of what floated the business.
And what kind of clothes did you have in those showrooms?
It's so funny. I think about this one brand, Celia Tejada. That was one of the first ones. Well, it was brands that I found. They were contemporary women's brands that went to, I guess, like it was the kind of product that I was buying for my stores. So I kind of knew that market. So those were the kind of brands that I was looking for. And
So the age range would be, what,
I mean, at
18
that
to
time,
34?
you probably, yeah, 18 to 34. That's it used to be like a range we used to talk about, right? Back in the day, 18 to 34, exactly. And no, but what happened was what popped off for me was I ended up getting this brand, which I talk about in the book, but it was one thing, but then it became another thing very quickly. And that was what blew up my showroom because it ended up being this like amazing new trend that was happening, this whole California dress look and the floral prints. And it was like this whole genre of fashion that popped off. And that's really what kind of, threw me, like now it propelled the showroom and it became, it's funny because I write in the book, instead of like the new and obscure, it was like the new and one to watch kind of thing. That's it was kind of almost, it feels like it was overnight and it was only within a few months. Like I really was very fortunate.
Right place, right time. Well, the California look that you're describing was patterns, right?
Yeah.
And eventually your look became a signature of pattern on pattern on pattern on pattern.
Yes.
Do you think
Ultimately.
that experience of the California fashion informed the way your signature look evolved, or was that?
No, it did because it was doing prints and I was doing prints and then I even had another and I was helping them as well and merchandise the line and I would go to LA. So I was finding the prints and helping them develop the prints, or there were companies that had prints and we would pick the prints. So I started to get that print experience early on. And then I had another brand that I was representing as well after this one brand. This brand was called Micah. After Mike, I was representing another brand and also same thing, doing prints. So I was like, I kind of got that whole print experience with the brands that I was representing. So when I did start my brand, it was definitely something that I kind of started to key into. But though I didn't really go full on into the silk prints for a couple of years until I was like a couple of years into the business. Because it was like, it's definitely, doing your own prints. It's like you had minimums and stuff like that. So I needed to kind of build the business a little bit first.
Oh, and it's tricky. I mean, you can totally flop putting two prints together. So I think that probably the background that you had with all the line and the rest of it explained to you probably just subtly. You can't put this with this. You can't put big with small. It needs to balance. It needs to be comfortable. They need to live together. And you say in the book that you've got a sixth sense about things. So I think you probably had a sixth sense about what is immediately going to look good with something else.
Yeah, I think so. But it's funny because I always say that, I always say like really I think the success that I've had and I was able to have, over the years really started with being on the retail selling floor. I feel like that was really where I got the master's degree, because working with customers, working with clients, seeing what they like, seeing what they don't like, that really, that to me is like, I think that's something that a lot of designers today don't have the benefit of that. And they kind of just they like throwing stuff on the wall and they don't really know what's happening. And they're not really understanding like the product market fit and who's their customer and things like that. And, 18 to 34, that's not, we need to go, we dig much deeper these days than an age range like that. We go more into the psychographics and things like that. So I think that, a lot of my success, I think, came because of my retail experience.
So psychographics, explain that.
Well, it could, I mean, like, okay, demographic would be the age range,
Yeah.
would be income, and then psychographic could be someone who's into sustainability or somebody who feels that, like more deep into the psyche of somebody, not just like the top, like, oh, I live in New York and I'm a 2-income family and I make 150,000 a year and, like that kind of thing, but more like, it's more like my beliefs, like what are my beliefs and things goes a little bit deeper.
And that would be part of a marketing program for a line too.
Yeah.
Emphasizing sustainability and so forth. But eventually you decided not to have, not to work for somebody else, to have your own line. You named it a very cute name. Can you explain how that evolved?
Yeah, definitely. Well, at the time I wanted, it's funny because I think it's happening again, but back in those days, like there was a lot of like 2 names, like so and so and so and so. It just seemed to be like a thing that was happening. So I had in my mind, well, I think it's happening now. There's so many things I look around and it's like Wither and Spoon and this, and it's like, I don't know, like there's a lot of like this and this. Anyway, but I digress. But no, but back then, I wanted like 2 women's names. And I remember I was brainstorming with my sister and she's funny because she's like, I'm the one that came up with Alice and Trixie. They were the wives from the Honeymooners. So, and a lot of people don't know that. And like, they'd be like, where'd you get the name? And I'd be like, it's the wives from the Honeymooners. And like, they would be like, they would always feel like this immediate, like, connection.
Well, it's familiar,
Yeah, exactly.
but it was never Trixie and Alice. It's always Alice and Trixie.
Always Alice and
Because
Trixie.
of just, it was easier to say.
Flowed that way. Yeah, I don't know why. But I think Alice, I mean, we think about Alice and Trixie. I mean, Alice was Ralph's wife. So I feel like she was like the main, Trixie was, they were like kind of the supporting cast, I think, to Alice and Ralph. But yeah, it was Alice and Trixie always.
And well, the logo, which appears in the back of in the back of what I'm wearing today, is really nice. Who designed that?
The one that well, it was designed a couple of times over the years, so I'm thinking the one that we design everything in house, and yours might have been one that was designed by I had someone that working on my team. Her name was Tig, and if it's the more to the last one, that would be Tig.
It has a plus instead of an ampersand, so it doesn't say and.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really nice. I mean, if I was wearing it inside out, you could see it, but I'm not. So eventually, I decided to close the business. What happened?
All right. It was 22 years that I had the company. So, I mean, what happened was, I think, market changes, wholesale became less and less viable, less stores to sell to because of the internet. And we were doing direct to consumer also. We had a website, we were doing direct to consumer. But it wasn't, I mean, the wholesale business was obviously a much bigger part of our business. And it got tougher and tougher. And there were just certain stores that like we were used to sell Saks Fifth Avenue and we were doing a large business with them. And then, I write about it in the book. Actually, somebody that worked for me during 2008 and 9 when we had the recession, their price point went down and they wanted lower price point merchandise. So like other brands were able to kind of get in the door, and then we kind of got edged out of the door. So
Got silk.
yeah,
Silk is expensive.
exactly. And making it in New York, which is again,
deal.
very expensive too, not made in China. So they were bringing in more China brands and lower price points and things like that at that time. So we kind of got edged out. So, you know, at 1 year, we were doing $1.5 million with Saks only in a year. That's a huge business to lose. So, you know, so things like that were happening, or again, like if a store went out of business in a town, you know, say in smaller towns, there wasn't another store that was opening. So this whole multi-line, you know, brand, you know, retail, like it's not happening. It's, if you look, there's a lot of retail stores that have, you know, one brand, like mono brand, like it's their brand and they're opening a store. You're seeing less and less and less multi-line retail. I mean, even in East Hampton, like Intermix is gone. Now they're only doing online. So basically the business was shrinking. You know, I saw it coming for a long time. And I just said, the business is shrinking. It's harder to make less money. It was like harder to make less money. And, but I'll say one of the things that, you know, where I think where I need to take responsibility was like, I don't think we were innovating enough as a brand, as a 22-year-old brand. It was, you know, we had customers that were still very happy to buy from us. We had other customers that were like, you know, well, now we used to buy Alice Trixie, now we're buying something else. And then we had new customers. But what happened was it was like different customers, and I wasn't, I got very confused by that. And it's like, if I was doing something like something that you would buy, maybe wasn't something that a 25-year-old girl wanted, you know, and
Kidding.
vice versa, you know, things like
Yeah.
that. So it was like, and we started, so we did have a broad age range. So it was harder to kind of appeal to everybody and appease everybody. And it, you know, I think you know, at that time, and when you're in it, we were doing 5 collections a year, 120 pieces in a collection, you know, a lot of product that we're designing and developing, and prints and patterns and, you know, silhouettes. And, you know, it really got to a point where I think I was, you know, and when you're in it, you're in it. Like, it's like, you can't see the forest for the trees. I mean, only when I came away from it was I realized that, you know, it was, and it's too much, and the industry's changing. It's not a, you know, it's too much product. It's like people are designing these huge lines, and it's like, we're talking about the sustainability factor, and it's hard to produce all that. And at the end of the day, I think we were kind of working in a system that was evolving and changing. And then when I realized that, you know, the idea of like, and this, you know, there's so many things that have, as of late, the fashion calendar, and, you know, not wanting to, you know, buy something that, you know, people want to buy closer to season and things like that. And, you know, where everybody was, you know, designing stuff for like 6 months out. And even, you know, and so much has changed, even with New York Fashion Week. Like, it's very few people doing runway shows. Like, the market it's proliferated, it's changed, it's shifted, it's evolved. And I think right now it's about, you know, it's about kind of, you know, reining it in and not being so, you know, big with everything. And I think ultimately, I think number one, I think, you know, so I felt burnt out. So why did I stop? Because I actually wanted to regroup, and I wanted to rebrand. And so I closed in October 2019 to do that. I even kept my office for 2 additional years after 2019 through the pandemic. But my plan was to come back, but because the pandemic happened and everything, and I just started, I don't know, I was just thinking, you know, maybe something else is in store for me. Like, you know, maybe maybe I'm not meant to go back and do this at this point. So that's kind of what happened. And so my thought was to rebrand. My thought was to look at, you know, kind of reboot and refresh the whole thing, rebrand and come back. But then the pandemic happened, and then I wrote this book. But
Well, so now has writing the book given you the opportunity to kind of check out, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What do I want to do? What do I not want to do? Sorry. In future, you could probably do motivational speaking. You could do a TED Talk. You could do all that stuff, you know, having, you know, you can say, been there, done that. And I can tell you how to do it, folks. So
yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm actually currently writing a TED Talk, and the TED Talk is called The Undeniable Power of One in Fashion. So I am working on a TED Talk, and I did speak. I had mentioned I spoke at Rutgers Business School recently, and which is cool, and I like that. I definitely like doing stuff like that. I think that that's great. I met with someone else in the industry. She actually is the author of a book. It's called the Designer Survival Guide or something. But anyway, so her and I met. I think it was yesterday actually, and we talked about potentially doing something together with to educate and things like that. So yeah, I'm thinking, and yes, and the book, back to the writing of the book, it was cathartic for sure, because I didn't even know I was burnt out. Like that's the thing. Like when you're in it and you don't even know, like I didn't even know. I was like, when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, like you were burnt out. Like you were like you needed to get off this merry-go-round. Like I felt like I was on like a ride for a
I
long
noticed in
time.
the book that you never went on vacation.
Yeah,
So-
no, I didn't. Yes, I would travel, but it was all for work, and I'd go to
Yeah.
foreign countries, but it was all for work. I didn't vacate. I didn't take care of myself. Everything was like work, 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 and it was, I sacrificed personal life. I sacrificed without even knowing. And yeah, writing the book was really it was interesting because it was like this whole kind of, like an awareness, it really brought awareness to everything that went on, and it was interesting, yeah, to look back that
Well, it must
way.
be very satisfying too, because it's a really nice journey that you've been on. And now, I mean, I thought a miniseries, a screenplay, sell it to TV.
I love that you're
So
saying
the
that.
title of I mean, this is a wonderful title. It's a splendid title, and it needs to go someplace else.
You know what? Thank you for saying that. And that it's interesting because people that have read it have said that to me. And it is about like seeing about somebody who would option it to do a screenplay, and whether it's going to be like a series, like you're saying. But I love that you're saying, because it's just reinforcing that to me, because sometimes I forget about things. Definitely, that's definitely something that has been brought to my attention. And but I need to kind of focus my effort on that and getting that. Right now I did get a review on Kirkus, which is like a review site.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got a nice review on that. So I just published it, and somebody I know said that they had gotten a movie deal, and somebody said, well, how did you get it? And they said, because Kirkus, somebody went on and saw the review on Kirkus and got the book, and then ended up like offering them um, optioned it for a movie. So yeah, if you know anybody,
I don't, but maybe somebody out there does.
any
Um,
contacts.
So let's say you're casting the show. Who's going to play you?
Oh, I would, well, I maybe Sandra Bullock.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Sandra Bullock. Yeah, it's funny. I think I've been asked this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it. It would make sense. And I always thought it would be interesting to have the voice, the you, telling the story. So each segment is a flashback, and then there's a younger you doing the thing in the hot pants and all that stuff
I love it.
with with your voice. I think it would be fun.
I love it.
would be
Almost
fun. I
like the
would watch
Wonder
it.
Years, but right? Because it's like
Yeah.
I love it. No, I do. I love it. And I think, I think that's what's happening right now. I think a lot of things in film and TV are kind of going back. It's funny because I don't know if you guys saw on Amazon, like it was something in the Daisy Six that was really good. That it's with uh, uh, Elvis Presley's granddaughter is in it. Anyway, she's great in it. But it reminded me, because again, it's like it's the music industry, but it's going back to the 70s, and I'm kind of feeling it's like, but we would be the fashion version of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people are nostalgic for shopping, shopping therapy, for the fun, for the bonding of the shopping, for what it was like to play dress up. I don't think you could write a fashion book about what's going on now, because nothing's going on. It's not. But then, yeah, Studio 54. I mean, you went everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about Studio 54. How easy was it to get in for you?
Not that easy. But yeah,
But that was a moment. I mean, that was a moment that
moment. Yeah.
in a screenplay would be swell.
Yeah. No, for sure.
And you could design the clothes.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't even think about that.
Come on.
All these ideas now. No, I'm going to leave her with this renewed zest.
Well,
for
I think what it
getting
is
this
is that
thing
I
optioned.
think I think the balance now where, you know, it's like you're the designer part of you and the business part of you. I think the business part of you is sort of, you know, getting stronger and you're not thinking about the clothes so much. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I am thinking about doing some actually I have a project that I'm thinking about what yeah, which I want to do. It was something that I had put on the back burner. It was something that I had started when I still had Allison Trixie in the last year in 2019, and it was designing pet carriers because I got a dog and I couldn't find a carrier that I liked for my little Chihuahua mix. I got my dog at ARF, by the way. Yeah, they
Girl.
came from Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. They flew all the pets. And so anyway, her name's Chloe, and I couldn't find a bag for her. And I designed one and I got a lot of compliments on it. People were like, you need to make these. So that's how it started. So that's something, that's a project.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's called Fang and Bone. I trademarked that name in like 20, then trademarked in 2020. And but then COVID happened and I put everything on the back burner, wrote the book. I'm the accidental author now. But definitely that's something that I want to pursue and do.
And you don't have to hire models to wear the,
Exactly.
you know, you can photograph
I
your
don't know.
dog wearing the, you know,
Exactly.
and do collars and
Exactly.
all that.
I don't have to do fittings.
Right.
I don't have to worry about, you know, if it's like sizing. I don't, you know, I mean, not well, pet sizing, but
And do pattern on pattern. You can do that.
I could do all of it.
So you heard it here first. Right. We're here at the beginning, you know, at the beginning of the beginning.
Yeah. I know I'm excited about it.
Yeah. And to have taken over the, you know, getting the patent or the, you know, the trademark.
Yeah. No, and it's well, something that I really put it, I kind of, I'll be honest with you, it was like there and it's been there. And I haven't felt like the time, but I'm feeling the time right now. I'm feeling like, because then I had the, you know, doing the book and the editing and the writing and the designing the cover. And, the, you know, I had a designer I work with and the interior. There's a lot of photos in the book as well, like from back in the day. So there's photos and this and that. So designing the interior. And then I did a couple of events. So getting ready for the events and getting the swag and, you know, all this kind of stuff. So I was very immersed with the book and now the book is published and like I am doing things like this and, you know, but at the same time, I feel like it's time for this new project to begin. So I feel like the timing's right now for Fang and Bone.
Well, Chloe is asking you for a carrier. Really, it's, you know, you have to listen to the vibration of the world, you know, it's somebody, you got a dog, your dog needs a thing, you need a project. That's it. Go for it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you ladies, though. I've been like, it's this like, it's almost like this fear of starting something new. It's like,
I think you have no fear. Does anybody want to ask her about being fearless? Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to repeat your question.
You've seen the fashion industry emerge over decades. I'm just interested in, you know, looking back from the 80s to now and how the women's movement, you know, influenced fashion, how it's emerged over the decades. I mean, I remember, you know, starting off work professionally in the 80s and, you know, wearing high collar blouses with little ribbons and just awful looking stuff. And, you know, over, you know, decades of, you know, working 40 years, it's definitely emerged. I'm just curious as to the influence, women's movement and influence on fashion where we are today.
I mean, oh God. I mean, well, it's funny because the stuff you were talking about back in the 80s, I was working in retail and I used to work on, my first job was on Madison Avenue and between 53rd and 54th Street. And we would have this like working girl mad rush from like 12 to 2 and then 5 to 7. And everybody was wearing, it was like the power suits and it was like a whole different vibe. I remember I would go to California and they were dressed so casually and I didn't understand it being from New York because everybody in New York was like all decked out. And
in California, they don't wear black.
Yeah, and they don't wear black. Exactly. That's true. Yeah. And so I feel, I mean, how it's evolved, I feel like I think everything's so much more casual than it ever was. And especially now with the hybrid working that we have, and obviously the pandemic and everyone wearing pajamas, but before that, but even before that, I mean, we'll dial it back. But even when like athleisure happened, like, we used to wear like jeans or whatever on the weekend, then everybody's wearing Lululemon, they're wearing leggings, so we went through that. Like we've been, like that was, athleisure, the normcore. It's like, it's changed a lot. I feel like we don't dress any. I mean, I don't think that we dress anymore. I mean, for sure. And even in the workplace, I mean, I feel like that level of the way we used to dress up back in those days has definitely shifted. I don't know if that answered the question, but I think a lot's changed. And I think that, yeah, I think we've gotten almost annoyingly casual.
On that, I watch the red carpets and stuff, and you see these incredible outfits that people are basically falling out of. And yet the escorts, men, not the escorts, but the men who are traveling with them, the boyfriends of these women who are decked out in stuff that you really couldn't even sit down in. These guys are wearing leisure, they're wearing sweatshirts and stuff like that. I think that, I mean, if I could change the world, I would make men get more dressed. Because I just don't think, I think that they don't reflect well on the women that they're dating, because they look lousy next to these women who are all dressed up, I guess, for the camera. I'm not sure who they're dressed up for, but
well, I feel like that whole hoodies, and that's become like really big part of our society. I feel like these days, like people be like, I'm doing a fashion brand, and it's like, it's a hoodie and a sweatpant. It's like, what do you mean doing a fashion brand? Like, what about that is fashion?
How is that?
It says something on it, whatever. Like, there's brands out there, which shall remain nameless, but I'm just saying, it's like, like, this is not fashion. Like, it's just
clothes.
Yeah.
Do you think that the women's movement, I mean, because you were in the business, obviously, do you think that the women's movement changed things for the better? You can shout.
Figured. Do I feel like the women's movement has changed fashion? I mean, I think when I first started working professionally in the 80s, you were wearing the power suits and, the shoulder pads and all that kind of stuff.
I loved shoulder pads.
And I look back at what I used to wear back then in horror as to what I wore then. And then but it's emerged over the years, and I used to work for a big 8 in consulting, went into sales, and then started working, dressed maybe a little bit more fashionable, suave, if you will, because I was in sales. But it's definitely, I have all these clothes now that I'm getting rid of, and I want to donate for Dress for Success.
CIS.
Dress for Success. Sorry. Just because they cater more to poor economic women that need that. Good more point. Than the folks out here, to be honest. It's faltered, and even, I mean, look what I wear now. I don't dress up as much as I like, and it's lost. And you only see people out here dressing fashionably if you're going to a party or something like that, and that's great to see. But it's certainly not the norm with people in the workplace today, or it's sort of sad to see.
It's just clothes.
It's just clothes.
Yeah,
it's just hoodies and sweatpants.
But don't you find that you miss getting dressed up? I mean,
absolutely.
But I mean, playing dress up or just trying on, when you switch over.
On one level, I find it so much easier.
From winter to summer.
On one level, I find it so much easier not to have to worry about all that stuff. But I have all these nice jewelry that I never wear any longer, and like, now I'm trying to get my clothes organized so I can actually put together something that looks nice to go out with. That's sort of casual dress up, or a little bit more everyday, sweatpants and turtlenecks.
Well, you lived in Long Island, and then you lived in New York. So you weren't as much in the car culture as you would be now. The thing about clothes, I think, is that since we're in cars, there are things that you can't wear. Like you can't wear a hat with a broad brim, a wide brim hat, and drive a car. You just can't. And if you wear I have a fabulous. I'm not. It's about me. I have the Norma Kamali coat, the sleeping bag coat. I have a red sleeping bag coat. It's the size of Chicago. I love it. It's on eBay. It would be $1,500. I'll never get rid of it. But it gets caught in the car door. It's just, there are clothes that exist to be seen walking down the street, and we don't walk out here. There are no people to fix shoes because your shoes don't wear out because you don't walk. You walk. Okay.
But what's interesting to me is over the years, I have a memory.
Closer.
I have a memory in the 60s of going somewhere and having almost a nervous breakdown because my shoes, my bag, my gloves didn't match. And to see evolving from that to somewhat more casual, and then going into the workforce and seeing clothing evolve from the blouses with the frilly collars and the shoulder pads to more simple, more svelte lines. That was kind of nice that it wasn't quite so rigid. So I'm interested to know, did you ever learn to sew? Have you sewn? Have you, I learned to make a pattern from a costume course at Boston University. And I thought it was just so cool to take a newspaper and draw out your pattern, cut it out, and work with that. So I wondered if you had that experience. And at this point, I love doing things with my hands. Did any of your creativity come from that, liking to make things? And then the other thing is, do you have an agent who could turn this into a movie?
I need to
Got any
find one.
ideas, Penny?
Know anyone?
We'll talk.
Okay. As far as my, it's funny. I was in contact with my pattern maker today, in fact, from when I had my company, like my last pattern maker. And, I never made patterns, personally. I've never done that. And I know how to sew and I have sewn, but I had people that were doing that in my company. I had sewers that worked in my company, and then we outsourced all the bulks. The production was outsourced to outside factories. But yeah, no, but I know from pattern making, it's very mathematical. And it was funny because I was actually looking up, I was like, should I learn pattern making? It was something I actually thought about recently because I'm going to give some things to I'm like, these are bags. I'm like, how hard could it be to make a bag? It's not like making women's clothing. So I was thinking maybe I could try to make my own patterns, but, anyway, I'm going to use my pattern maker, but yeah, no. And I think the main thing though, and a lot of people, what's interesting, it's almost like a myth because a lot of people think, like a lot of the young people today think that they have to know how to make the pattern, cut the pattern, sew the pattern, send it down the runway, because Project Runway is really what teaches you to do that, where that's not actually what, Tim Gunn, who was he was in the beginning of Project Runway, he was at Parsons. That's what they do when they do their final school project. But that's not how the real world works. Like they're teaching people, it's not how the world works. It's like, you can't do all of that. There are technical people that you can, as long as you have a relationship with your pattern maker, that they can see even a chicken scratch print, but they know what you're thinking. Like you need to have that relationship with the pattern maker that you can, if convey what you want and they can understand it. That's the most important thing. And then you have people sewing, because as a designer and an owner, maybe if you're an entrepreneur, there's a lot of bigger fish that you need to be frying than trying to do all those aspects of the business when there are technical people that specifically do that. Yeah. So, but yeah, the one thing I did do by hand, which I really liked, and I did it here in Watermill. I started like hand building sculpture, and I made like a really amazing mug that I thought was pretty cool, because it has like a fat handle. And for anybody that has like a hard time with like a little tiny, you know, I don't know, that's something else that I might be working with as well. My new mug, my new mug design.
No, can we just back up a little bit? Did you, when you had an idea, you just said chicken scratch. So when you had an idea for, let's say this sleeve or something like that, did you draw it or did you kind of wave your
No,
fingers in the
I
air?
drew, no, I drew that. Like I knew that. And, but also don't forget, I also had designers too that worked under me. So, I mean, that design, I think I came up with I believe I came up with myself, but I did have designers that I worked with as well that, so it was really a collaboration, but something like that got sketched. And when I say chicken, I mean, I can kind of sketch that like more than chicken scratch, but yeah, I don't know. I was just being,
Your word?
I was exaggerating.
Well, anybody else? Yes.
Well, I just have to say, it's just, I've had so many little ridiculous fashion oofs that I made, flipping through my mind. Once, I had gone to art school in California, so I had sort of a Mary Quant dress, but it was fuchsia and magenta striped, and I wore purple tights, and I had purple patent leather shoes. And I worked in an advertising agency, and one of my more hip girlfriends says, the Playboy Club, we can go there for lunch. And, I said, well, we can't go there. Yes, everyone could go there for lunch. So the three of us girls were there for lunch, and I decided to have a Bloody Mary. And go with my outfit. Well, no, but this is where I'm going with this because it was quite short. And I was sitting there, and actually I spilled some Mary on my dress, and the skirt was so short that it didn't even show. Anyway.
Well, you were brave to wear that.
Yeah, and there are just so many little funny memories, like going to Loman's.
Oh
And one of my girlfriends saying, I like this almost as much as better than going out.
This is
better than sex.
This is the bonding that
Yeah,
happens when you
exactly.
go shopping together, and you can remember the score that you made. You remember the fabulous blouse that you got.
Yes.
Isn't it amazing how you can forget the names of boyfriends, but somehow or another that white blouse or that skirt, that was
what I
just
wore, as
perfect.
Nora Ephron said.
Yeah.
Where I went and what I wore was that it.
No, it's what, but you have these peaks and valleys, and sometimes they are visually the thing you were wearing. I know what I wore when I met my husband.
Totally. No, they're kind of like these benchmarks, remembering. And the other thing I want to say about Loman's, that was the beginning of the end. Like when people like Loman's went out of business, like that was like, because Loman's was amazing. That back room at Loman's, like that was such an amazing store. I remember we used to sell to them. We'd sell off price at the end of the season. Like we loved Loman's. And just reminds me of like, in the years, like from like 20, from 28, like 2008 and 9, a lot of people went out, like the trees shook. There were a lot of people that went out, and then some people came in, and then like, 10, 11, 12, there was, more people going out. But I don't know, that was like when Loman's was one of the best stores. And it was a shame that they were like a casualty of, things going online and things like that.
Well, everything was a casualty. So I want to know whose clothes you wear these days.
Well, this is Allison Trixie. So I'm wearing my blouse, these jeans, Citizens. I mean, honestly, I even shop at Zara. I hate to say that. I know everybody's like fast fashion, but they make really cute stuff on the cheap, and I'm okay with it.
Well, we learned how to do that with Fiorucci, didn't we?
Oh my God, Fiorucci. I remember.
Anybody remember that?
I remember on 57th Street, and then I went to the one in Milan once, Fiorucci. Yeah. But no, I mean, I wear you know, I don't, it's not about the label for me. I know clothing, so I know when something's well made, and I just go by the quality of something and not necessarily the price tag. Because if it's well made and I think it's of good value, then I'm interested in it. I don't really wear that much designer stuff. I mean, unless like I buy it vintage, or I still buy vintage clothing sometimes. But I'm not, I mean, I go to the fifth floor at Saks, but the stores are changing. It's really, I usually buy from some younger, like newer designers, like people you find on like Instagram and things like that. Like there are these designers coming out of Sweden now that are kind of cool and well priced. Honestly, I look for price point. I'm not looking to spend a fortune on a wardrobe at this.
If you had to buy something in East Hampton, where would you go? Aside from LVIS.
No, I would, no, I mean, I like, I mean, if price wasn't an object.
Yeah, price is no object.
No, I mean, you know, I, no, I mean, I like Zimmerman. I think they make really nice stuff. I like, Click, that, you know, she has cute stuff. I mean, Kern Zabetti they have obviously designer stuff. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, I used to shop at Intermix, but they're gone now. I mean, I like Neely Lotan. I think they make some cute stuff. But again, I think if but something like that, like I could get that for a lower price point. So it's like if I think about, you know what I mean? It's like, can I get this for a lower price point that has the same look? Then
Okay, I think we have to wrap it up. Whoop. Probably on eBay. You can probably buy it again.
As the population ages and the bulk of marketing research is older women who at this point have money to spend, it amazes me that so much fashion is geared towards young people. And I know because I have girlfriends her daughter works for Chanel, and they go through clothes like tissue paper. And my girlfriend and I get hand-me-ups. But I'm amazed that the marketing research doesn't produce more intelligent, interesting, fun fashions for older women.
If I could get a hold of Ralph Lauren by the throat, I would say, Ralph Lauren lady, do a line of Ralph Lauren grown up.
yeah,
Same with J. Crew, you know, classic stuff for people of a certain age. Well, except that the armholes are really, really tiny and the darts are really high and you can't wear that stuff.
yeah, I want to speak to this because it's what you're saying is very, very important. And I think that is the problem, that people are not looking to design for people that have money, that have maybe a fuller figure, or, you know, they're kind of going to wear something this short, you know, that kind of thing. And it's like, what, I don't know if you remember, there used to be a store called The Forgotten Woman. Do you remember that? I think
Yeah.
that was it was like plus size people, but I feel like older people are like the forgotten women. Like people are
I
not,
agree.
yeah, it's like people. And I think that was one of the things that, like, there were, you know, like you're wearing Alison Trixie. My stuff some of it would cater to people that were older. And I think that
Watch your step.
there is
older.
that. No, but I'm older, but I'm saying I'm older too. But
Yeah.
you know, I just think that there is a market there, and there's a market, and people have money and they're willing to spend it, and it's underserved 1,000%.
Absolutely.
And I can't tell you how many times I have bought a dress and added ribbon on the bottom so it wasn't up to my thigh, because it's inappropriate for a woman my
Yeah.
age, I think, to wear chicky sweetie.
Well, age appropriate clothes.
And it's
very
also
hard
from
to
the
find.
70s. That's when I wore that. And so to me, it's dated.
I want to get people out of pastels, you know, women of a certain age. Don't wear pink sweatshirts, wear fashion, but they can't get it anywhere. They just can't. So, yeah, who's listening? Give us some clothes. After you finish Chloe's little cat bag, then Alice and Trixie for seniors. For grownups, yes, for grownups, not seniors. Yes. Thank you, everybody. Oh, wait, one more question? Uh-oh.
Who were your competitors?
Who were my
Who
competitors?
were your competitors?
I mean, at the time, I would say there were brands like Parker and Misa. I don't know if you would know these brands, but I guess, you know, when I think about somebody that was doing prints and silk, Amanda Upperchart is another brand. You know, to like, I mean, not that they were a competitor, but I would sell to some of the same customers like Alice and Olivia, for instance, like similar, you know, customer base.
So you were not the Missoni Pucci
No.
market?
No, but interestingly enough, in Europe, I did have a distributor, and in Europe, we were in stores that were carrying those designer brands, and we were like the opening price point. So we were and it was again, we were marketed very different in Europe. In Europe, it was that moneyed customer that had, you know, and whereas here it was weird. We were kind of almost like the high end of the store, whereas in Europe we were the low end in the store. So it's very interesting how the markets are different.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everyone.
Thank you for your interesting questions.
Thank you.